Let's clear one thing up. I really don't like that this movie turned out the way it did, because I'd been quite looking forward to finally sticking it to the crowd of bullies out there outright wanting this to flop so that the rights could revert back to Marvel. And while yeah, the suspicions of Fantastic Four being a mess turned out to be true in this case, yeah, there's your review in a nutshell, by the way, anyone wanting to know whether to go see this or not. I really hope that this doesn't encourage people to wish failure on future ongoing movies just because they turned out to be proven correct in this case. It's a horrible atmosphere to place around a production, and it's outright immature and mean when, for all you know, you could be bashing a perfectly solid film before you've even seen it. I want this to be known because while I am probably going to get a little pissed off in this video, I wanted this to be good, and I feel that showing our support for movies, even if we do think they might be bad, is something we should encourage far more often. You never know what you'll end up with. Anyway. Well, that 2005 movie is looking pretty good right about now, am I right? So the Fantastic Four is the third, yes that's right, third attempt to adapt Marvel's very first original superhero team to the big screen, despite no one really seeming to want it, and the buzz not being especially optimistic either. All we seem to have heard from behind the scenes is that the production was a struggle to say the least, and it's no question that this entire enterprise was kicked off just so that Fox could turn around to Marvel and say, haha, at least we still own Silver Surfer. God, you know what guys, I gotta admit, today I just don't know whether to be angry, sad, or just plain fed up. Fantastic Four is an inconceivably confused, unstructured mess of a movie that is so unbelievably inconsistent in its tone, quality, and aspirations, it's taken me 4 rewrites to get this review to a place where I'm happy with it. It seems so intent on being incoherent as a whole picture that all it manages to do is show up to remind you that Fox still owns the Fantastic Four. The director, the studio, the editor, basically everyone involved in the production all seem to be on completely different wavelengths. It's a movie being made by people, some of whom give a shit and some of whom don't. It's clear tons of scenes have wound up on the cutting room floor, the runtime is too short, the costumes... oh dear lord, the costumes... But what's more frustrating is that for a moment there, things were actually going okay for a wee while. Yeah, you heard that right. The first half of Fantastic Four is actually kind of okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. The cast is solid, Josh Trank seems to be going for a tonal mashup of adventurous Spielbergian sci-fi and Cronenbergian body horror, and it sets the stage for a pretty cool second half. All of which gets forgotten about when out of nowhere we jump 1 year ahead into the future and the entire thing just takes a gigantic nosedive. What starts as something with legitimate potential instantly drops downhill into a lazily rushed, stupid, ugly looking, geographically limited, generic, tonally confused concept of a superhero movie, with by the way one of the most pathetic and boring villains I've seen put to screen to top it all off. Seriously, what the f*** happened here? We heard earlier this year that there'd been trouble on set with director Josh Trank, but it really does feel as if he just f***ed off halfway through for Fox to then desperately try to pick up the pieces and finish the movie for him, which would explain why the film trades in every mildly interesting artistic choice at the midsection for every eye-rollingly dumb superhero cliche in the book. It feels like a superhero movie made in the times when no one knew how to make a superhero movie. Our setup, I refuse to call it a story, boy genius Reed Richards, with the help of his new friend Ben Grimm, tries to create a teleportation device and successfully manages to transport a toy car into places unknown, only to retrieve some sand in its place. Several years later, Reed and Ben have been perfecting the technology and are soon approached by scientist Dr. Franklin Storm and his adopted daughter Sue, who claim the sand comes not from another part of the planet but an alternate dimension altogether. And after explaining that they've been working on a similar technology, but a bigger, more expensive version with the intention of sending actual human beings, Storm offers Reed a scholarship at the Baxter Institute to help them complete the project. Joining Reed and Sue in the lab is Victor Von Doom, whose name is still so astonishingly stupid I'm kind of amazed they stuck with it this time, and Johnny Storm, Franklin's hot-headed but still promising son, who's basically Kirk from post-2009 Star Trek, where he gets to have the personality of a carefree douchebag, but still somehow inexplicably retains the intelligence of a super smart scientist, and funnily enough whose opening scene even involves him driving a car dangerously fast, but whatever. First means first, I want to stress that I really do like the cast and I think it's the film's strongest feature. Miles Teller is awesome as a younger, more timid and awkward Reed Richards who does really well with his comedic timing. I actually laughed a couple of times at the subtle humour he was putting into his performance, and he clearly gets the character far more than the script should logically allow him to. The rest of the team are fine and get the job done, but they don't really get many moments to shine. Kate Mara works in the role of Sue and shares a strong chemistry between Teller and Michael B. Jordan, who's just about likeable enough for you to be on board, and I must admit, I even kinda dug this loner version of Victor before he becomes generic McBad guy. Surprisingly though, Ben Grimm seems to be the big misstep in the character department in the fact that he's barely in the film at all. There's a good 30-45 minutes where he's nowhere to be seen until called upon when Reed, Johnny and Victor drunkenly decide to get in the pods, teleport to the other dimension and plant the American flag themselves before NASA has a chance to. That's a unique take on the proceedings and an admirable effort, I'll admit, to realistically explain how 4 people that are most certainly not qualified to be astronauts managed to travel to another world despite the facts, but Bell's preceding absence leaves us next to no time at all to learn or care about Ben Grimm before he becomes a giant rock monster, and they also completely leave Sue out of the trip. What's that about? But I have to stress, everything before that aforementioned time jump, despite the flaws, I quite liked. Is this portion of the film perfect? No way, but I still think there's something there. The Fantastic Four aren't exactly superheroes, they're scientists and explorers that get caught up in superheroics, and it feels like the filmmakers knew that and had their aims in the right place at one point. The movie feels far more focused tonally and thematically when our characters' motivations stem from discovery, passion, and their interests in making the world a better place. That seemed shockingly faithful to the source for me. Some will argue it's an awful lot of dull exposition, but it was slow time to at least attempt character establishment, and I found myself enjoying the performances and chemistry on screen all the same. Hell, when the team get back and everyone's bestowed with their powers, there's some really effective creepy body horror at play. These powers are treated less like gifts this time and more like life-ruining illnesses, curses, things that make them feel uncomfortable, dangerous, and scared in their own skin. It's well-directed stuff and a refreshing take on the concept. Unfortunately, all that decent stuff feels as if it's setting up a completely different film. Once Reed successfully breaks out of the military base that they're being kept in and that time jump occurs, the following events come off as if the film's in a desperate hurry to end, so everything afterwards is rushed beyond comprehension and all the elements to make up the bare minimum required for Fox to call this A superhero movie and B a Fantastic Four movie are just shoehorned into the picture without rhyme or reason. The team can control their powers now. These are their costumes. Dr. Doom, he's a thing. I guess he wants to destroy the Earth for some reason. Death of important characters. No time to mourn, we've got a fight scene to do. We won. The end. I wouldn't be surprised if all of the final 30 minutes was shot by a second unit crew just to meet trailer deadlines. And narratively, anything that seemed to be going places is dropped instantly or never even addressed after the fact. Doom and Sue have a history. Does that go anywhere? Nope. Johnny and Sue are adopted brother and sister. Does that go anywhere? Nope. Ben was abused as a kid. Anything? Nope. To that end, there is no story. Learning to work as a team plays less like a narrative arc and more like a footnote when Reed goes, "Hey guys, perhaps we should plan our attack as a team instead of hitting him one by one." Yeah, no shit. The effects are poor. I can stretch myself to give Mr. Fantastic's powers a pass since that has license to look a little springy and rubbery, and the thing looks okay I guess, but Jordan's face when alight looks overly cartoonish, much worse than the effect they were using a decade ago, and the entire finale just sucks. It's essentially the cast standing in front of a green screen and then CG doubles fighting Dr. Doom, despite the guy managing to kill folks earlier on the spot by blowing up their heads without even a hint of effort. Oh, and side note, this version of Dr. Doom is f***ing abysmal. His appearance is terrible, he has no motivation, he looks like a blimmin' crash test dummy, he has no charisma, and if you thought we saw so little of him in the trailer because they were saving something special, well, they weren't. He's just only on screen for about 10 minutes. There's the seed of an interesting idea there with him sharing a symbiotic relationship with the planet they go to, but that's all it ever becomes. It's ultimately just an excuse to have him levitate bits of the planet and somehow create an interdimensional portal between worlds out of rubble that can destroy planet Earth. No, really, I'm not making things up, that totally happens. And there's zero reason to care about the city-scale stakes when we've spent the whole runtime cooked up in the lab and military base this whole time. The action is next to non-existent and is so wildly unspectacular to the point where I can't even remember if the thing said it's clobbering time or not. I'm usually the first guy to put his hands up and say, yeah, it's flawed, but that scene was still pretty cool, huh? The only problem is, the time for forgiveness ended 10 years ago. This is the third Fantastic Four incarnation and we're still here talking about how these filmmakers can't seem to get these wacky characters right in an age where audiences are already totally fine with Tom Hiddleston sporting the biggest helmet horns on his head imaginable. The 2005 version was stupid stuff and more in line with a pilot to a TV sitcom, sure, but at least it had a fun, enjoyable tone, scale, humour, entertainment and Chris Evans. Fantastic Four is probably going to be something we talk about in the future as a what the hell happened there discussion point. On my end, the biggest, most glaring issue is a lack of one defined vision. It has no overall idea of what it's trying to be. It's a dull, lifeless idea of 3 different movies, none of which form into a cohesive enough whole. And you just know that this being the third Fantastic flop will single-handedly destroy any chances of an audience taking an interest in the next time they try to make a movie about this group of characters in 20 years or so. Folks, honestly, if you want a good Fantastic Four movie, just go rent The Incredibles again. Cheers for watching guys, and as always if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel.